good evening. I'll let you sit if you sing loud. We're going to sing Higher Ground, hymn number 484. I'm pressing on the upward way, new heights I'm gaining every day, still praying as I onward bound, Lord plant my feet on higher ground, Lord lift me up and let me stand, by faith on heaven's stable land, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. My heart has no desire to stay where doubts arise and fears dismay. Though some may dwell where these abound, my prayer, my aim is higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand, by faith on heaven's table land, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. I want to live above the world, though Satan's darts at me are hurled, for faith has caught the joyful sound. The song of saints is higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand, by faith on heaven's table land, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. I want to scale the utmost height and catch a gleam of glory bright, but still I'll pray till heaven I found. Lord, lead me on to higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand, by faith on heaven's table land, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. Brother Don, would you lead us in prayer? Let's continue singing with I Will Sing of My Redeemer, hymn number 575. I will sing of my Redeemer and his wondrous love to me. On the cruel cross he suffered from the curse to set me free. Sing, oh sing of my Redeemer, with his blood he purchased me. On the cross he sent my pardon, paid the debt and made me free. I will tell a wondrous story, how my lost estate sealed my pardon, paid the debt, and made me free. Brother Dave Burke, would you lead us in prayer?
Amen. All right, I got it, Kendall. Left me hanging. That's okay. Just a few announcements. In case you guys didn't notice, we're going to try to incorporate some of the younger men in doing these announcements. So going forward, we'll have young men up here doing these announcements, but I'll take the burden this time. But you're going to have to help me out next Sunday, Kendall. Deal? All right, deal. Just remember the men's retreat this coming weekend. And if you need a ride or want to ride with me, let me know. I'm probably going to be taking my wife's automobile. I haven't told her yet. And I haven't also received permission yet. So I've broken all of the ones that I drive normally, and now I guess I need to try to break hers. You don't have to talk about that, Greta. We don't have to talk about that. But men's retreat this coming weekend, and I'm looking forward to that. All of the youth boys have signed up, and it's going to be a great time. So I'm assuming you boys want to ride with me. Is that the case, or are you guys driving yourselves? Oh yeah, you're going to Tulsa, right? Yeah. All right. So you guys just let me know if you want to ride with me. And remember, May the 2nd, we're having Cottage Prayer Meeting at Penny and I's house. Penny will have definitely some food ready, and I'm sure she'll have a devotional ready for you guys. No? Is that a no? Somebody will have a devotional ready, but anyways, we'd love to have you guys come and be part of that Cottage Prayer Meeting. We plan to restart those on a monthly basis beginning in May and continuing on. So be praying about whether you would like to host a Cottage Prayer Meeting or be part of that. Just let us know. We'd love to facilitate that with you. Graduation Fellowship coming up on May the 4th, and that's at 5 p.m. We're going to have the Graduation Fellowship in lieu of evening services. We've got the 5 graduates, Jack, Becca, Maddie, Brady, and Joan Otan. All of those will be graduating this year, and that's it's kind of sad for me to see, but it's also the next step in these young people's lives, and we want to celebrate that as well. Remember, the church mowing volunteer sign-up sheet is back there on the bulletin board, and sign-up sheets for the camps are back there. The youth camp. It'll close at the end of this month, and the Associational Children's Camp registration is closed already. I think it closed on the 15th. As of today, that closed. So just in case you want to know, that sign-up is a little different than they've ever done it. And if you're a parent of somebody that's going, or you know a parent of somebody that's going, it's all online. So we will give you a QR code, and you have to go make an account, and we can help walk you through that. We can do it on the computer back here in the office. But you have to sign up your student online and then link it to our account somehow. Anyways, it's Falls Creek's muddled way of signing up for camp, so it's always an adventure. But we can assist with that if you need help. And the last thing I want to bring up is I know you guys have heard me lament about our computer for many years now. Our computer's been in need of a replacement. I think we voted on that about 4 years ago, and it got approved. I am happy to announce the new computer has been purchased and has arrived. It is here. So that being said, I'm going to do my level best to get that thing set up and ready to go this week. So if we do not have any visual aids next week, maybe it'll take me 2 weeks to set it up. Those things don't always go as planned, so have a little grace with me. But the new computer is here, and I'm excited about it, and hope you guys are as well. I know Becca will be. That thing moves really, really slow. So, but you know, it's like the rest of us. When it gets old, it gets a little slower. also. Hey, speaking of that, did you guys know that that cows give more milk if their farmers will speak to them? Did you guys know that? It's a case of in one ear and out the other. Y'all laughed. Good job priming them up for me, Brady. I appreciate that. I got a giggle this evening. You're fired. All right, we're going to be in Acts tonight, in Acts chapter 23, in a message entitled The Next Great Escape of Paul. We've already seen Paul get himself out of, or God get Paul out of many, many precarious situations through the book of Acts. And this passage is no different as Paul continues to work in his ministry that God's called him to in chapter 23. Last time we saw a masterful, cunning Paul on display using uncommon wisdom in a conversation with his detractors to take the focus off of him and put it on the gospel. And Paul did an awesome job of that. Actually got those guys mad at each other as he preached the gospel and stayed on point, and they stopped being mad at him. And tonight we're going to watch, and in my case, we're going to watch and wonder as God protects Paul from those that would kill him. You see, like I've said many, many times in the course of this study, God never calls us to do something that he doesn't give us the resources to complete. And God's already told Paul, if you'll remember from a few weeks ago, that Paul was going to go to Rome, and to Rome Paul will go. If you remember, we talked last time about Paul before the council and how the council had basically tried to arraign him and brought him up on charges, and Paul kind of got them divided against one another. And it wound up in this like terrible mess of people, and the proconsul was so worried that the mob was going to get up there and tear Paul apart that he basically snatched Paul out of the council and brought him into the barracks. And as Paul is in the barracks, basically under house arrest, God comes to Paul and says to Paul, "Look, Paul, don't fret, don't worry. Just like you've preached the gospel here in Jerusalem, now you're also going to preach the gospel in Rome." And that's where we pick it up here in verse 12 of chapter 23. When it was day, the Jews made a plot and bound themselves by an oath, neither to eat nor drink till they had killed Paul. There were more than 40 who made this conspiracy. They went to the chief priests and elders and said, "We have strictly bound ourselves by an oath to taste no food till we have killed Paul. Now, therefore, you, along with the council, give notice to the tribune to bring him down to you, as though you were going to determine his case more exactly, and were ready to kill him before he comes near." Now the son of Paul's sister heard their ambush. So he went and entered the barracks and told Paul. And Paul called one of the centurions and said, "Take this young man to the tribune, for he has something to tell him." So he took him and brought him to the tribune, and said, "Paul, the prisoner, called me and asked me to bring you this young man, as he has something to say to you." And the tribune took him by the hand, and going aside, asked him privately, "What is it that you have to tell me?" And he said, "The Jews have agreed to ask you to bring Paul down to the council tomorrow, as they thought they were going to inquire something, as though they were going to inquire somewhat more closely about him. But do not be persuaded by them, for more than 40 of their men are lying in ambush for him, who have bound themselves by an oath neither to eat nor drink till they have killed him. And now they're ready and waiting for your consent." So the tribune dismissed the young man, charging him, "Tell no one what you have informed, that you have informed me of these things." And then he sent and called 2 of the centurions and said, "Get ready 200 soldiers with 70 horsemen and 200 spearmen, and go as far as Caesarea at the 3rd hour of the night. Also provide mounts for Paul to ride, and bring him safely to Felix, the governor." May God add understanding and application to his word this evening. So here we are on the stage once again with Paul in peril from man. Paul in peril because of what he's doing, because of the life that he's living for God. We talked this morning in Sunday school class from John chapter 16. And John chapter 16 says, take heart, be at peace when you rest in Jesus, but you'll suffer tribulation in the world. That's not a direct quote. It's a JDism. But that's basically what it's saying. That's what he's saying. He says, take heart and peace and rest in Jesus, but as long as this world is there, you're going to suffer tribulation from the world. You find peace and comfort in Jesus. You find trouble and distress in the world. And as Paul tries to live the life that Jesus calls him to, over and over again, the world presses in and causes him peril. But you know what I find most fantastic? Is that all the while that the world is causing Paul tribulation and trouble, Paul's at peace. Paul's always at peace with the situation that he's in. You see, we look at this Paul being in peril for men again. We see people are willing to kill him to keep their lives. You see, all Paul wanted to do was share the truth of the gospel with the people that needed to hear it, namely the Jews there in Jerusalem, whom Paul had a heart to share the gospel with. He wanted them to hear the gospel. And since God put it on his heart to share the gospel, Paul was doing that. And to keep their lies, to keep their mistrust and their mistruth together, they just wanted to kill Paul. You ever seen anybody so mad at being exposed for what they see as truth, those things being exposed as lies, so mad that they're willing to hurt somebody because of it? It happens all the time. As a matter of fact, a great deal of the wars in the world occur because of this simple reason. People want their lies to be true and they're not. And once those lies are revealed as lies, people get angry. And that's what's happening here. You see, people love the darkness because in the light, their lies are exposed. And that's what Paul was doing. It was shedding the light of the truth of the gospel on the lies of man. And Paul was preaching the light. He was ready to expose the darkness of mankind. The problem is, rather than being cleansed by the light, people were offended by it. And they didn't want to hear it anymore. USA circa 2023. People don't want to hear the truth. They want to be succinct in their lies. They want to be buried in the darkness of their lies. They don't want to be exposed to the truth, because the truth sometimes hurts, doesn't it? Sometimes the truth is difficult to take. And that's what was going on. This group of people had decided that their best option was to murder the person that was responsible for shining the light and showing the people the truth of God's grace and mercy. And that still happens today, folks. I read an article not long ago about a Christian church, I think somewhere in Africa, that multiple dozens of people were slaughtered because of their faith in Christ, because they wanted to bring the light and the truth of the gospel to a place that needed to hear it. You see, people would rather live in their sin, unbothered by the truth of God's word, than be changed by the glorious grace of the gospel and have a life free from the burden of sin. Why is it? Why is it, church, that people would rather live in the darkness than to have that darkness exposed by the light, and then to live in the glorious truth of that light? I can tell you what it is, church. It's pride. We don't want to admit when we're wrong, do we? We don't ever want to say, I was wrong about that, and I'm sorry. Well, let me tell you something I've learned as a leader, not only a leader in an arena like this, but a leader in my vocation outside of here, a leader in a classroom, or a leader pretty much anywhere I go. The one thing that I've found that I respect most about leaders is when they're willing to admit when they're wrong. I don't expect anybody to be perfect, but I do expect people to have integrity. And you see, all Paul was doing was sharing the truth and leading in a way that says, listen, I was once on the same side of this fence as you are, and I was wrong. And here's the truth. Here's the light of the glorious gospel that God shined on me, and I want him to shine it on you so you can live in peace and comfort and satisfaction just like I do. But we don't want to be told that were wrong. You see, the people wanted to kill Paul just to keep their lives. And then I got kind of encouraged a little bit by this, because Paul, he must have been some kind of like superhero or something, or at least they thought he was, because it was going to take over 40 of them to get this deal done. Like, I don't know about you, I think I'm pretty tough. And I could probably take on, I don't know, one or half a guy or so. But you know, I'm reasonably sure it would take a lot less than 40 to get the best of me. I know that from experience. It would take a lot less than 40 to get the best of me. And what really blows my mind here is that there's 40 people, and not only do they just get together and decide they're going to kill Paul, they say, we're not eating or drinking anything till we get it done. My goodness, these people meant business. Many times already through the book of Acts, we've seen people try to kill Paul, and none of them have been successful. I wonder if they heard all these stories, and they're like, we're going to get him this time, boys. Ain't no way he can get away from 40 of us. That group thought since their numbers were so great that they'd be able to pull off their conspiracy and kill Paul simply because he was telling the truth. See, they were so steeped in their tradition and in their selfish ambition that they vowed not to eat or drink anything until they stopped Paul from saying the things that they didn't want to hear. It's not that he was saying anything wrong. It's that they were saying things that was in opposition to their own selfish nature. Church, we can look at this and condemn these Jews who decided that they needed to kill Paul, but can we look introspectively and say, listen, myself, I need to recognize that my own selfish nature is not important in light of the gospel. I need to recognize that what I see, the traditions that I'm steeped in are not important in the light of the gospel. Now, I'm not saying that traditions and doing things a certain way is bad. What I'm saying is when those good things get in the way of the best things, it becomes a problem. You see, these Jews thought they were living right. But they had let their traditions and their ideas stop them from hearing the truth. In church, we can't ever find ourselves in that position. It was no different then than it is today. People would still rather hide in the dark and enjoy their selfish nature than be exposed by the light and be cleansed by the nature of God. You ever had a pretty bad deep cut on your body somewhere and it gets dirt in it? Anybody ever been there? Just me? I've been there. But you know what you have to do in order to take care of that wound? You got to clean it. And let me tell you, when you got a pretty deep wound and it's got dirt in it, sometimes you got to get in there and scrub a little bit. And let me tell you what, it's not a very pleasant experience. It's not a pleasant experience, but it's necessary to keep you healthy and to make you able to heal. It's no different than being washed in the light of the glory of the gospel and letting God's nature change your nature. Sometimes it's painful. It's painful to have to change who you are because you weren't who God made you to be. But you know what? That's the truth of the gospel. As a matter of fact, the Bible says any man who's in Christ is a new creation. That means you've changed. That means there's something different. That means you've had to update who you were and become who God made you to be. And yeah, that can be a painful situation. It can be a difficult transition, but it's necessary all the same. And rather than be willing to step into that transition and be party to what God wanted them to be party of, this group of people thought it best to kill the one that was showing them the way. See, even the religious elites, they were willing to enter into this criminal conspiracy. They went to the high muckety mucks in the church, right? And they were like, yo, high muckety mucks, Y'all talk to the other high muckety mucks and tell them to bring Paul down here, and then while he's on the way, we're going to jump him. And we're going to put the smack down. And then the other high muckety mucks were like, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that. Because then we'd be rid of Paul and we can continue in our wrong traditions and we can continue in the dark, and we don't have to worry about the light exposing our problems and our dirt and our background that isn't correct, and we get to stay in our selfishness. You see, Paul had pushed so hard to expose the discrepancies of the Jewish faith from the Scriptures, to show them the differences between what the Scriptures say and how they were actually living, that even the so-called religious elite leaders were willing to commit murder, or at least to be party to the conspiracy that would cause Paul to be murdered so that they could keep their status quo. Two dangerous words. Two of the most dangerous words in faith that you'll ever hear. Status quo, when paired together. Heard Boomer preaching last week, and he said, don't ever try. He basically said, don't ever try to not do what God tells you to do. And you know what stops us more often than not? Is that status quo. Like, I like it the way it is. Let's just leave it how it is. We don't need to change anything. We don't need anything different. Let's just leave it how it is. God's okay. He's been okay with it for all this time. Why would he want to change it now? Well, I don't know if you've been following along in the book of Acts with me much, church, but let me tell you what was happening. God was changing things. He was changing the way things were done. He was revealing the finished work of Christ to a people that needed to see it, but they hadn't lived that way for thousands of years. And it was hard to get his point across. See, traditions and opinions can be dangerous things, especially when they get in the way of what God wants to do. We've got to be willing, church, to let go of the things in our lives that get in the way of God in our life. Did you hear me? We got to let go of the things in our life that get in the way of God in our life. Not to say traditions are bad. I love traditions. I love things, and everybody's got an opinion. If you're in a room with 3 Baptists, you've got at least 5 opinions. The opinions are a good thing, and we should talk those out. But listen, we should never let those things get in the way of what God wants to do. Jonah tried that out. You guys heard Boomer talking about that, right? Jonah let his opinion of the Ninevites get in the way of what God called him to do, didn't he? He's like, these are some nasty folks, God. I don't want them to get saved. I don't like them, and I don't want you to either. But that's not what God had in plan, was it? No. We can't let those things get in the way of who God calls us to be. So not only do we see here that Paul was in peril once again, we also see, again, that Paul was rescued from an unlikely source. Not such an unlikely source. We all know it was God that rescued Paul. Because God had told him in these red letters, and here in verse 11, take courage, for as you have testified to the facts about me in Jerusalem, so you must also testify in Rome. Paul knew he wasn't going to die here because he had to go to Rome. God had already spoken it. It was as good as done. But we see God always has a plan when he puts somebody in motion. God had a plan for Jonah. God knew Jonah was going to rebel. God had a plan for how to get him back on track. God knew that the proconsul, God knew that the Jewish elite were going to try to kill Paul, and God had a plan to get Paul to where he wanted him to be. See, somehow here, by God's providence, as I read this, a nephew of Paul had heard the whole plan of the people committed to killing him. Now, I don't know about you guys. Just me thinking with trying to have the criminal mind here. If I'm committing conspiracy to commit murder, if I'm working on conspiracy to commit murder, I'm going to try to have at least a private conference room, right? Like, I don't want other people knowing what's going on, right? This is not something that you put out on the Facebook. You don't say, hey, anybody want in on this criminal conspiracy to commit murder? I'm pretty sure these guys were probably trying to hide out, trying to be a little discreet about what their plan was, but somehow this nephew of Paul overheard that whole plan. Surely if they'd known he was there or they had seen him, they would have kept their plan secret for a little longer and they wouldn't have shared it. But somehow God allowed him to hear the whole thing under the authority of God. And by God's will, Paul's nephew heard what was going to be done, and he sought a way to protect Paul from a terrible fate. Well, listen, I got a nephew in the room tonight. I'm pretty sure if he heard a conspiracy to commit murder against me, he would just be like, I don't know what's going on. But Paul's nephew didn't. He started to think about what was going on. I was like, man, oh, Unc, he's in trouble. I got to go figure out a way to help him out. There is no minister of God who can claim that his or her ministry is built completely on their own work without any support, church. We all need the help of one another to get through this life that God calls us to. No one can successfully work for God on their own. We all need help, and that's why God made the church, to bolster and to lift one another up while we're to work for the God of the universe. Guys, Paul, in my opinion, my humble opinion, but is correct, is the greatest missionary that's ever walked the face of the planet. Paul. And he needed help from time to time. Didn't he even ask for help from time to time? Didn't he have people going on these missionary journeys with him from time to time? Guys, we can't do this on our own. And here's what I know with all my heart, that God has a plan for you, and that when you need help, God has a plan to provide it. So don't push God's help away. So Paul's nephew shows up at the barracks, as you were. The way that I read that, the definition of barracks is kind of a strange word, but it kind of means jail. It kind of means house arrest. It's not exactly, I don't know exactly what it means, but Paul was not allowed to leave where he was at. I can tell you that. And so the nephew shows up and he talks to Paul and he's like, yo, Paul, these dudes are trying to kill you. Just wanted to let you know in case you didn't want to be killed. Now you know. So, okay, good job. Keep it up, bro. And so after Paul was warned, he found an uncommon ally in the prison guard. You see, he was warned and he asked a favor of the guard. And the guard didn't have to comply. The guard could have said, leave me alone, chump. I don't want nothing to do with you. I don't want none of the trouble that follows you. Just leave me alone. I'm guarding you like I'm supposed to. Now leave me alone. But he did help. Again, church, God puts people in places where they need to be so that his will can be done in the lives of his ministers and so that the work of the gospel can continue. Here's what I want you to know today, church. God has put you in a place for a reason. And you might be the nephew, or you might be the Paul, or you might be the prison guard. Whatever your role is, God has equipped you to fulfill it. The question is, will you? When that time comes, will you be open to hearing what God wants to do in your life, or will you be so steeped in your traditions and your opinions that when God shows up, you're like, nah. I don't want to hear it. I can't change the way I've been doing things. I can't be somebody else. You see, the guard, that would have been a pretty uncommon ask of Paul to the guard, like, hey, guard, come get this boy and take him to your boss's boss and tell him he's got something to say. Well, I want to know what he's got to say. I can't tell you what he's got to say. Well, I want to know or I'm not taking him. Well, you just take him. Okay. Can you imagine how that played out? That's how it's going on in my head when I'm reading this. because I'm argumentative by nature. And if I'm a prison guard, I'm going to be like, well, you tell me first, and I'll decide if he needs to go or not. Come on, some of you would too. You see, I want to ask church this evening, are you willing to be a chess piece on God's game board? Are you willing to be used of God the way that He sees fit? Or you want to go your own way and lose the blessing of being part of God's plan? Lucky for Paul, this prison guard, for lack of a better term, decided he would play this out and see what happens, you see. And then, not only, Paul's nephew had already put himself at risk. I don't know if you guys caught this or not, but there's a group of people that want to murder Paul. There's a group of people that want to murder Paul, and it's more than just this 40 that have committed to it. There's a lot of people mad at him, and this nephew of Paul's, I don't know how old he is, but this nephew of Paul's goes to help Paul. That's probably not a good position to get caught in, helping Paul. And then this nephew, he goes above and beyond by saying, all right, Paul, I'll go with this prison guard, walk across town, let everybody that's in this conspiracy see me going with him, because they're going to walk the path. They're going to walk the path right in between where those people were laying in wait. And Paul's nephew had to know this was going to put his life at risk. Not only did Paul's nephew warn him what was coming, Paul asked him, and without even thinking about it, he went without question to the captain of the guard, who could have very well arrested him, who could have said to him, I'm just going to go gather up these conspirators, and you can offer your accusation in front of them. That would have been a pretty common practice. Boy, that'd be a tough spot to be in, wouldn't it? How would you like to be in that spot? Never mind, I didn't hear nothing. How inspiring Paul must have been for a young man to be willing to put his life on the line to save the life of Paul. He could have just said, I already warned you what to do. You want, do whatever you want with that information. I'm out, bro. But that's not what he did. He went the extra mile when Paul asked him to. Church, the ministries of great people are built on the faith of friends and family who went the extra mile to support them. The extra mile in prayer, the extra mile in support, the extra mile with encouragement, the extra mile, whatever the gifting that God has given you. Don't forget that. No one person's ministry is successful by themselves. And then we think not only was Paul rescued from an unlikely source, but finally, once again, God made good on His promise that Paul had nothing to fear. Let me stop here for just a minute. Paul recognized in his life that he had nothing to fear. I spoke this morning about us believing that Jesus came out of that grave. Church, let me tell you something tonight that's rung true for the last 2,000 years. If you put your faith in Jesus and you believe He came out of that grave, then there's nothing in this world that can hurt you. There's nothing in this world that you should fear except for snakes. There's nothing in this world to fear if you believe that Jesus came out of that tomb. See, God had already told Paul, be encouraged. You preach the gospel in Jerusalem, you're going to preach it in Rome. And you know what? Paul in his heart knew beyond the shadow of a doubt that he was going to go to Rome. When Paul's nephew showed up to tell him that these people were waiting to kill him, I'm thinking that what's going on in Paul's mind, he's like, God done told me I'm going to Rome. But I appreciate the heads up. Let me do something with this information. It's kind of like last night, the storms that we're going through. Like, I trust in God, right? You guys trust in God? Like, no storm can get us, can it? That's why God gives you the availability for storm shelters, by the way. See, Paul decided to use the information given to him judiciously, as many of you did last night to go to the shelters. My wife tells me all the time that I can't accelerate my departure, that I'll go when God gets ready to take me. And I agree completely. I just had to offer comfort to my puppy dog last night instead of going into the shelter. If that accelerates the situation, so be it. You see, Paul is judicious with the information that's given to him, but he's not worried about what's going to happen to him. And church, we don't have to worry about what this world can do to us. God says to us, be afraid of who has power over the body and the soul. And there's but one that has that power, church, and that's God. God had already told Paul to be encouraged. In the end of the last passage, God told Paul he was going to Rome to preach the gospel. That means that no matter what he was going to face, no matter what else happens, Paul would be preaching the gospel in Rome. Jonah was told, you're going to go preach in Nineveh, and no matter what Jonah tried to do to get out of it, Jonah preached in Nineveh, didn't he? He did. When God tells you something, church, you can take that to the bank. There's no need to second guess or wonder how he's going to do it. Just know that he's going to do it. And know there's nothing you can do about it. Because he's going to do it. See, Paul didn't have to fear reprisal from the government of Rome. From the government of Jerusalem, because Paul's path was going to lead him straight to Rome. And Paul knew that. God had already told him. So God had told Paul to be encouraged. And then, what did God do? He got Paul out of Jerusalem. See, the captain of the guard said, well, that's some interesting information, young man. I appreciate you giving me that information. And then he told one of the centurions, he said, gather up 200 chariots and 200 dudes with spears and put Paul on a horse and march him right down the middle of the city and see what these 40 folks got to say about that. The commander of the guard decided to get Paul out of harm's way after he'd learned of the conspiracy against him. I don't know why. I don't know why they cared so much about Paul. This was Rome. This was Rome. It was the greatest empire known to mankind. One puny little gospel preacher. What do they care about him? They don't care anything about him. But God does. You know what God did? And God made a way for Paul to get out of Rome. Not sure if it was because he cared or if he just didn't want the trouble, but he found a way to send Paul to the next level of adjudication in the Roman court system, which was going to send him to Rome. See, although Paul had done nothing wrong, he would have pled his case all the same, but God sent him on the first leg of his journey to Rome. And you know what? You know what we're going to find out? When Paul got there, what did he do? He preached the gospel. He preached the gospel in Caesarea. That's what he did when he got there. Well, he's supposed to be defending himself to Governor Felix, right? He's supposed to be going there to defend himself. His adjudication is coming, and he's supposed to be preparing for court. You know how he prepared for court? He was singing hymns in the chains. What a mighty God we serve. He wasn't worried about what he was facing. He knew what he was going to say when he got there. You know what he was going to say? Hi, I'm Paul on the road to Damascus, ... That's what he was going to say when he got there. You know why? Because he didn't care what the courts did to him. He didn't fear what the government of Rome could do. He wanted to present the gospel so that they also could see the light. But you know what I think about? As you see, obviously the captain of the guard got Paul out of Jerusalem, and he was safe, and he was gone. And there's this little matter of these 40 folks. You see, Paul's would-be attackers were left in a conundrum. Paul had 400 folks around him to keep him safe. That's a lot more than 40. I don't have that many fingers. That's a lot more than 40. And by my estimation, the 400 probably could have taken on the 40 with no problem and put them to shame. But you see, this group of 40 men, they'd made an oath and promised not to eat or drink until they killed Paul. Not only had Paul escaped their plan, but Paul was also protected by an army of people, well-trained and armed. And even if they could catch up, they weren't likely to overtake Paul's protection. Even if they did want to chase them down, they weren't going to win. So not only did they fail their goal, they're also left with the decision to forsake their oath or to die. Which do you think they chose? I bet they were eating steaks that night because they didn't have integrity. All they had was their opinion and their tradition. They didn't care what the truth was. They cared about protecting the status quo. Church, just like Boomer taught last week. And just for the record, I wrote this message before I went to Atlanta, so this was already written. Don't ever find yourself in opposition to God or to God's people. He's got a funny way of making you pay for it. You see, these folks, God didn't have to touch them. God didn't. They were either going to be disgraced because they forsook their oath or they were going to starve to death. Neither one was a very good option. And they put themselves in that position by opposing the God of the universe. So we close today. I just want to finish with this thought. See, it wasn't enough that the gospel had got Paul arrested and almost beaten. And they put him before the council to defend himself for doing nothing wrong, and now they wanted to kill him. And a pretty good reward for just being the person that God tells you to be, that is, isn't it? That's a pretty good reward, isn't it? Everybody go like this. If you're living the life that God calls you to, you're likely going to face difficulties. You'll find trouble along the way. Don't be discouraged. Be encouraged, because whatever God calls you to, He'll get you through. Whatever path God puts you on, He'll walk with you all the way to the end. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you again this evening. I hope that you can take this word and think about what God's path for you looks like. And don't let insignificant things get in the way of doing what God calls you to do. I love you all so much. Thank you for being here. Kendall, would you pray us out of here, brother?